I have been invited today, this very important conference, I think it's a maiden conference for Africa, to speak on the necessity for investment. We are increasingly looking at the GDP contribution of each country into the landscape of science and technology. Now, if you look already at the landscape of science in Africa, Africa is almost 50% of the world population, and yet we generate, I think, less than 2% of the knowledge in this world. And in 2015, the United Nations recognized the central role of science and the central role that science would play in countries to be able to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 of them, and for the first time in the UN history, they have recognized that science is key for precisely ensuring prosperity for all. And yet what do we see? We see the African continent is going to be worse hit in terms of climate change. We see the African continent with the youth population in the median age of 18 to 20, younger population. And we see how climate change is going to impact the continent. So there is an urgency. There is an urgency to address the capacity building. There is an urgency to empower the population with the right scientific tool. There is an urgency to train girls in science. So all these features are coming to a head to see to it that leaders recognize that they have to invest, and I insist on the word investment because very often people think of education, health, and all the social safety net as an expense. It is not. It's an investment that we have to bring to the people, and all countries that have recognized the transformative capacity of education, of research, these are countries that have made headway. And here I have in mind, for example, the transformation that South Korea, for example, has achieved through investment in science technology. So this conference call, I think, is a wake-up call for all of us to bring to the agenda, to bring to the table the fact that Africa can engage in cutting-edge science, and today we've had the pleasure of listening to some wonderful conferences from top leading scientists, and they have shown that if we invest in that space, we will be able to deliver on water issues, and I think recently we had a very big water crisis in Cape Town, food security, agriculture, and health. So these are some of the key areas where we will need to be able to deliver. But more important, there's something which tends to escape us on the continent, especially in academia. Countries and universities tend to not appreciate the value of blue sky research, how to generate academic data that don't have an impact immediately, but we know that the impact will come later on. So how do we generate information? How do we generate data which will be useful in the future? But more importantly, how do we generate data which are homegrown, which are coming out of homegrown problems and generating homegrown solutions? Because these data, these credible data, will help to influence policy. And we have been very good at adapting other people's data, but we need to generate our homegrown data so that we can shape our policy. And this is something that we have to bring on the table, because the future, as we have seen this morning, will be in artificial intelligence, in the exploitation of big data. But the big data, the data has to be credible, the data has to come from our institution, and this is why we need to invest in our own people so that we come up with all these very, very important key features.
Brilliant, thank you. And what's your hope for the outcome of this conference?
As Professor Maza has highlighted this morning, it's the very first time we're having this conference on African soil. Here we're bringing out the necessity to actually engage in very high cutting-edge science. So I think in the first meeting we should see a networking to happen across the continent. I'm very happy to see people from Morocco, from South Africa, from Zambia, from all the places here. So this first meeting, I think, is a very, very good meeting in as much as we should develop a network. Because science is a collaborative, is a partnership exercise, and we can only make headway if we have South-South collaboration, but more importantly North-South, and this will be the way forward. So I sincerely hope that this will not be a one-off, it will continue and in various locations on the continent, so that we ensure that leaders and all the policymakers and all the scientists they come together regularly within this event, we can see how we can bridge the gap of science, the paucity of data generation, but also very importantly, we have had a lot of transformation that this can bring, so we have to address the IP landscape, the intellectual property landscape, so that this patent, this IP generated on the continent will be one way for generating wealth and of course jobs and of course prosperity.